Good morning, everybody. My name is JP. I'm from Electrolux, and I'm very privileged and honored to share this with Steve this morning.
Thank you, JP. As I said, my name is Steve van Zyl, and we'd basically be talking today about the anode in my steel storage tank. Today's talk is going to cover a couple of things, such as what is corrosion and rust. We'll look at what is an anode, its purpose. We'll look at some pictures of new and depleted anodes. We'll ask that important question, what's the average lifespan of an anode? We can also look at some signs, clues, and those things that can help a plumber identify potential anode failure. Obviously those telltale things to say, hey, I think it's time now to do that replacement of the anode. We'll also look at some common questions that are always asked about anodes, and then we'll just end off with a quick recap of today's session. Karim, could you move to the next slide for us, please? So, Johan, I believe a very good starting point to kick off today's session would be to first look at what is rust or corrosion of metal. So basically, where rust or corrosion of metal happens, there needs to be three things. And if you look at the top picture, you need to have iron, there must be oxygen and water, and then basically it ends up in rust, as we see that brownish stuff that you find on metal. I think we all can agree that this is really plentiful in hot storage water. I mean, we've got metal, we've got that oxygen and water. And rusting begins, as I understand, from oxidization, which is when ions basically lose two of their electrons to the oxygen, which is then found in the tank. So in order to protect a tank, one needs something. And that something is to try and slow down that corrosion or that processing. And that something is called an anode. In some cases, you might have heard the word sacrificial anode. So before I move down to the bottom picture, I just want to maybe just talk to those who have maybe cut away the geyser before. So a steel tank, if you sometimes open a steel tank, you'll see there's like a blue lining against the outer of that casing. And that enamel basically is almost like a protection. It's called a vitreous enamel, and that also protects the geyser from rusting or corroding away, as they say. But that over time there can still be small little cracks that do occur, and then basically that starts to rust the heater or this hot storage water tank. So storage water heater manufacturers place an anode rod into a tank to protect the tank from the corrosion. Now, if you look at the bottom picture there, you'll see that anodes are either magnesium or aluminium. In South Africa, majority of anodes and geysers in South Africa are installed with a magnesium anode. And an anode is basically made up, as I said, of magnesium and alloys and other type of metals. But both magnesium and aluminiums, and it's very important, they are less noble metals. So what I'm trying to get across is that because they are less noble metal than metal itself, they seem to almost corrode quicker in water. And I guess probably that's why they call it a sacrificial anode. So they basically give up themselves. They say, rust attack me as the anode and don't attack the metal on the outside. So just to quickly recap, anode is a less noble metal than steel. It gives up electrons faster to oxygen molecules, and basically it sacrifices itself in order to protect the tank from corrosion. And that brings us to the point which obviously this product needs to be replaced now and then, and we'll basically cover that now and then a little bit later. But it is important that anodes need to be replaced in order to protect the cylinder. JP, anything that you'd maybe like to add to this slide before we ask just to move to the next one?
Yeah, Steve, maybe just to mention that the magnesium and aluminium, you would use aluminium anode more on your borehole water supply to geysers than the magnesium one.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to the quality of the water, and I think you and I are going to be chatting to that slide just a little bit further on. But I think let's next slide, and let's just have a look at what are those. What does the anode look like when it's depleted, and what does it look like when it's new? I think this slide on the left, if you look at the left picture, you'll see the anode's fairly depleted. And if you look closely in the top left-hand corner, you'll see it looks like there's almost like a needle-looking thing. So the magnesium's around that, and it's basically a 3 millimeter steel rod in the center. The second picture that you're seeing in the middle is basically someone removing an anode, and you can see that that anode has started to deplete or needs to be replaced at that point. And if you look at the far right-hand corner, you'll see what a new anode looks like when it goes into the geyser or gets replaced. Basically, the anodes do deplete at various rates. I think we will talk to that a little bit later, but it's just for our viewers, just to see what it looks like when it's really depleted, and just to state basically what that 3 mil rod looks like. And that's just in the center, and that's just a rod. It's a holding rod to hold the magnesium or the aluminium around, you know, in almost like a housing type of thing, if you could think of it like that. All right, next slide, Karim. So what is the lifespan of an anode? It's a very good question. There's a lot of factors that need to be taken into account. It really depends on the water quality and other factors. And when I say other factors, man, that could range from things affecting that level of depletion. You know, it could result in the amount of water that's been used, that's going through that hot storage water heater. Could be a stray current, could be some galvanic action, dissimilar metals that are playing, and the anode's also now trying to protect that. So those fittings that are going onto a geyser, some electrolysis that could be happening. So those are the factors. When you see the word factors, there's a host of factors that can affect the heater or the anode depletion rate. But in most cases, it can last anything from a few months to well over 3 years. Next slide, Karim. So I think JP touched on the point, you know, some water may be termed a hard water or soft water. The slide basically speaks to, well, what is hard water? And that's water that has a very high mineral content. If you can see at the bottom, I'm trying to give a bit of an overview of what is hard water and what is soft water. But let's just quickly take a bit of time on the hard water. It has a high mineral content. It contains magnesium and calcium ions. So those calcium ions obviously would attack the anode a little bit faster. For those a little bit interested in, well, how do we test it? Well, you can have water tested to determine if it is hard water or soft water. I'm not going to make it too technical, but, you know, if you're looking at a concentration, and it's normally calcium carbonate, that's another word, or some people also maybe know it as, and I hope I'm saying this word, it's called calc, that you hear the guys saying, well, yes, but this has got a high content of calc. And basically, if you're getting a reading on between a 0 and 60 milligrams per liter, then obviously it falls into like a soft range of water. And then basically you start moving to hard waters when you get a reading of about 120 to about 180 milligrams per liter, which is then hard water. And then it goes up, and you get up to, and ladies, you get up to readings of 300 milligrams. And I've seen some stuff that's, you know, really, it's a really hard water. As JP mentioned, you know, boreholes can really sometimes have hard water because it's not softened or been even, and you can soften water by putting in a softener into a system as well. I think the important other part of the slide is that within SANS 10252, there is a note. It speaks about corrosion in water heaters, and it says that it can be reduced by cathodic protection. I think I have highlighted in yellow. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, and you can obviously read through at your leisure. But basically, high temperatures promote rapid anode consumption, and routine replacement of the anode is very important to prolong the life of the heater. And it just basically says the anode should be appropriately earthed to the tank and system. Remember, I was talking a little bit earlier about, you know, you don't want to have electrolysis, it's not earthed properly, that you're going to have things that would affect that depletion rate of the anode. Other things, like I said, water usage. You've got a lot of water going through one little cylinder all the time. So you're drawing a lot of new minerals and new water into that system all the time. So yes, that would then speed up the depletion of an anode. Yeah, I think the next slide is quite an interesting slide. I think I've got a video as well, just to show you what are those telltale signs of that you need to look for to say, well, it's now time to replace the anode. Before I move on, is there anything from your side, JP, that you'd like to maybe just add to the slide before we move to the next slide?
Steve, I'm happy. I think you've covered everything, Steve.
Okay, great stuff. Just jump in, JP, and I just normally just rattle off anyway. We'll look at the next slide. So, signs of an anode depletion. So, ladies and gents, there's obviously a visual inspection that one can do. So, basically removing the anode, having a look at the anode. Let's just work through systematically on this. So, the visual inspection is something that you could have a look at. If you see something like that, guys, it's time to replace the anode. The bottom just shows you new versus worn again. If you look to the external indicators, and this is what I really want to try and share with you, is that, you know, if you've got a client phoning in and complaining that, you know, or complaining of any of the following, it should be a very good indicator to suspect that there's an anode depletion. So what would that be? Well, it could be brown or rusty water. Are very, very good telltale signs that there's a problem, that it's maybe there's rust that's happening, the anode's depleted, it's not doing its function anymore, and you're getting that brownish looking water that's coming through. The other one that is a very good one is that you'll find plumbers say, man, Steve, the water's got to smell like rotten eggs. And basically that is the aluminium and magnesium reacting in the water. There's also sometimes anaerobic bacteria, which does exist in some waters and within tanks, and that also reacts with magnesium and aluminium sacrificial anodes. And basically what's happening is that it's producing a hydrogen sulfide gas. Now that's that classical rotten egg odor that you do smell. The only point I want to make on that is that hydrogen sulfide itself is flammable. So just to our plumbers out there, please, if you're smelling that and you are working and doing replacements and that, just be careful. It can be flammable, and plumbers should always exercise caution and safety when, you know, attending to anode replacements and working on systems. The bottom picture, you see, it looks like a glass of milk. Well, that's that milky, cloudy water that, you know, sometimes consumers say, you know, the water coming out here is milky. It is a very good indication that the anode is working and, in fact, depleting. It may just be depleting maybe faster than normal. And those are basically tiny bubbles that clouds the water. The other one that's quite common and is that, you know, you hear that the consumer or, you know, is complaining that when he opens the taps, there's a large amount of excess or splattering that's happening. And that's a very, very good indication that the anode may be depleting, and in most cases at a faster rate than anticipated. And, you know, when let's just have a look at the video. I think the video basically gives a good idea as to what I'm referring to. I'm not talking tiny little bubbles or small spatters, but excessive spatters. Kareem, I think if you just tab on that at the bottom right hand, it should be a video which you could maybe just play for the audience or for the listeners, please. So, ladies and gents, I hope everyone saw that video, but that's that excessive splattering that's happening, and those are normally those little telltale signs you need to consider looking at replacing that anode. So, JP, I think the next point is that if we could just go to slide 8, is, well, we get a lot of questions that come across our desk. Some of those common questions that we get is, man, how often should I replace the anode? Well, as I mentioned to you, it's dependent on many factors: water quality, the usage. You may need to check with the geyser manufacturer. They might have a special recommendation, do it every year, 2-3 years. I do, however, believe that it's very good practice that at least we do a visual inspection once a year, or especially if the client's complaining of any of those signs that we just had a look at now, that milky water, splattering, and obviously the rust and that brownish water that's coming through. JP, from Electrolux's side, what are those tips? When should an anode be replaced and how often? Have you guys got any guidelines that you could maybe share with the listeners?
Yes, we do, Steve. So we encourage people to have their, if it's a borehole supply and a geyser, to have the quality of the water tested at least once a year. Depending on the hardness of the water, we have found that you could be replacing the anode rod anything between intervals of 3 to 6 months. Again, depending on the hardness and the quality of the water. On normal municipal supply, we encourage people every 12 to 18 months to have just do a spot check on your anode. And if you start seeing that it is starting to deplete within the first 2 to 3 years, so it should last you anything between 2 to 3 years, and then it is advisable to replace it.
Okay, great. Other common questions is, is an anode covered under a warranty? That's also very common. Is it covered? Is it not? My only thing is that I think we just need to say anodes are made to be consumed, and therefore my understanding they do not normally carry a warranty. If I think of my own car, my services on my car, it's similar to like an oil change. You need the oil, but at one stage it's no good anymore, and you need to replace it over time. It's just probably one of those things that has to be replaced, and it serves a very good purpose of protecting the cylinder. So I think from my side, I think always just check with the manufacturer of the geysers as to, is there a limit? Is it included? Is it excluded? Is there a specific time frame which they would consider it? JP, what is Electrolux's stance on a warranty aspect? Would you maybe just like to comment on that for us, please?
Yeah, sure, Steve. Because of the functionality of the anode, and again, we come back to quality of water, etc. Anodes are not covered under warranty.
All right. So if there's excessive splattering, I've just put in a geyser, and the client phones me in a week's time and he says, yeah, something at play, and it's just it's milky water and it's splattering. Is there anything that the plumbers need to know out there? Could they phone you for assistance? What is it that they should be doing? I mean,
well, they're more than welcome to keep in touch with us. Phone Electrolux. If a geyser splatters quite a bit, especially if it's a new geyser installed, we would like to know about things like that. Our finding is that, again, it could be that you need to replace the anode rod from magnesium to aluminium, especially if there's a lot of splattering taking place. That is what we have found in the past. So yeah, I think if anybody has got problems with new geysers and the anodes, and please give us a call. We're more than willing to assist.
And that would just be a normal service warranty call that the plumber or the consumer would then obviously just lodge with you guys, correct?
Yeah, correct. So to be your normal 1 in 5 years, or the aftermarket sales, if they have bought an anode to replace it and the plumber picks up a problem, it's maybe using the wrong type of anode rod, then we're more than willing to advise and get involved there.
Right. Let's just quickly look at the common question number 3 then. The previous anode only lasted 1 year, and after doing a proper water test was found to fall into hard water value. Is it advisable to switch from magnesium to aluminium? JP, I think you have already covered that, and from what I understand, most water heaters are fitted with a magnesium anode in South Africa, but aluminium anodes should be used in hard water conditions or where the water quality is poor, and where it is very basically that high mineral content, which we spoke to on one of the previous slides. So yes, it is advisable then to use an aluminium rod if you in the hard water volume or where you've got boreholes and those kind of things. Last one that normally comes up, JP, is, are there any pointers on replacing an anode, cleaning and flushing? You find that obviously when you take an anode, you've got all this dirt and grit and stuff lying at the bottom. What is your take on that? Have you got any pointers that you could maybe share with the listeners?
Yeah, I think, it's very important that when you do install a geyser, just give your client feedback like normal, like a car as well. Every 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 Ks, you'd send it in for a service. Same with the geyser. It needs frequent service, at least every 12 to 18 months. And also what we find is that when you do the service on the element and thermostat safety valve, don't forget to have a look at the anode rod. That's important.
Okay, great stuff. Karim, next slide. I think this is just a recap of today's session, just high level. So what we're saying is an anode is replaced in a water heater to prevent steel inner tank from corrosion. An anode can be made from magnesium or aluminium. Remember, it's a less noble metal than metal itself. And an anode corrodes faster than the tank, and that's why they say it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrificial anode, and it sacrifices itself to save the tank. And anodes are made to be consumed, and therefore do not normally carry a warranty, but just please check with your manufacturer if they do. And remember, there are various factors that influence the depletion rate of anodes. And I think that brings us to today's session, or the conclusion of today's session. Karim, if we could just move to the last section. Are there any questions from any of the listeners that we could maybe take or field?
Thank you very much, Steve and Johan, for this informative session. We just have a quick comment, and the comment is TDS meter, and then compare to the booklet supplied with the geyser. So that comment was given while going through the comment questions.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, TDS would be able to give you the hardness. There are some fancy meters out there that are available to purchase. They're not always the cheapest, but yes, it's a good point. Thank you very much, whoever posted that comment.
And then we have another comment that just came through. So to replace the anode and element and thermostat almost cost the same as new.
JP, you want to grab that one?
Well, I wouldn't say almost cost us new. That's a bit hard. The answer is that you need to inspect these components and where required to replace it. But in terms of material, definitely not cost as almost to replace as new. Maybe one needs to have a look at that.
Look, I think maybe, and I'm not too sure if I've understood the question. It might have been, do you have to do all of those component element thermostat and that? I mean, I think it basically might just boil down to you might be replacing the element, but just do a visual. I think that's what we're saying. Do a visual on the anode. You're busier there. You obviously got the opportunity. And if the anode is still fine, then obviously it'll just be the anode, the element. I think that's maybe, if I've understood the question correctly. So from my side, it's always a privilege and a pleasure to chat to the listeners. Thank you from my side for making time. I hope it was a very informative session. If there are any questions after the session and you feel you'd like a little bit more information, feel free. As you can see on the questions tab, both my just click one more time. I think you'll see Johan's email address and both my email address. There we go. If anybody wants to get hold of us, please do. Thank you once again for the opportunity, and to my colleague Steve Brown, and special thanks to Johan for joining the session. From our side, have an awesome day. Karim, thank you for hosting and putting it together for us as well.
Yeah, I think to you, JP, and to Steve, thanks very much. And I think, to all the listeners, I mean, it's a key thing. We always replace geysers and everything else. And I think that it's just to put it in some way to make that call, advise the consumer of those components that need to be serviced. Again, if you go and look at it from a monetary value in your bottom line, is that for every geyser that you install, depending on the conditions of the water, is there's another service call if you do it correctly. So I think it's just to advise the consumer. It's been very open, telling them that it is a component that needs to be done. And just put it in the book for that service call. and, you know, just do the follow-ups. And I think the sooner we do that with the consumer, once it's been installed, they're aware of it, you hand it over the booklets, then they expect that call. And obviously the gears are going to last that much longer. And, you know, you don't get into any issues with regards to warranty voids, et cetera, et cetera. So well done, Steve. Well done, Karim and JP for this morning. Take care.